on this video, we're going to try and line up the front and rear door and get our gaps right. So follow along and hopefully you enjoy. Hi, I'm Larry. This is my channel, Miller's Rods and Mods. I'm just your average guy that works on anything and everything big or small, from custom fabrication to routine maintenance. In the process, my family and I do our best to have a little fun. As I learn to perfect my skills, follow along and enjoy. Mr. Cluck is swinging in the hot rod. Alright, before you start a project like this, there's a lot of things to consider. You want to see how the door fits to this angle, and how it fits to the back part of the body here, how it fits around the wheel well here as well. But also, with 4 doors, you want to have the front door in place. So that's the next thing we're going to do. We're going to put the front door on, put the hinges in it, and see how this door lines up to the front door. Because the front door, there's not a lot of adjustment here. Most of the time, not always, but most of the time it's pretty straight. It's pretty square to this piece here. And then from there we can make our adjustments. But as you go along and do this and put the inner structure in, you want to make sure that you keep checking. You check every time to see how the gaps are working together there, or working against you sometimes. Here's a close-up view of the gaps that we're working with. They're not too far off, but they do need some improvement. You can see up here as you go up to the top of the roof, you can see how that top body line, how the door is touching it. That's just one of the major gap lines that we need to pay some attention to. And these hinges here, they're threaded in the front door of this Model I. In the back door, they're not threaded. At least I don't think they were, but you can comment below and correct me on that. But it's helpful to take a chaser, thread chaser, not necessarily a tap. You can use a tap if you want, but I have this kit here and it'll chase the threads and clean them out. That way the screws don't get held up, and they're going to be straight edge screws on this hot rod. So, you know how difficult straight edge screws can be if it gets tight in there or whatever. But you just spray a little bit of WD-40 and then you run your chaser in. Cold chisel. Use them to like knock burrs off or center punch. Yes, it's the door. Helps if you clean the pin before you try to hammer it in. I didn't put this one in tight. I probably just clean that anyway. But 2 of them is sufficient enough to get the door where you want it. So now I'm going to tighten these screws over here, because I had to loosen them up to get the pins to line up with the door. These screws, I ordered them, but the heads were way too big. So I ground the heads down farther. I can show you here in a minute. I ground the heads down, which made the circumference of the head smaller so that they fit like they're supposed to. Because I wanted stainless steel screws, and they didn't make a stainless steel screw that had that size. I was talking earlier about how I ground the heads down these screws, and you can see the difference in size. See that? So they didn't come in a circumference, in this smaller circumference like this. They came like this. So I ground the head down till it got to the circumference that I wanted, and then I just took a grinder or cutoff wheel and made the flathead in there. so that it would fit in here. Otherwise, in these holes here, it like protrudes. It'll protrude out like a 1/16 of an inch, and I think the other side has it like that because I didn't put these screws in yet. I made them before I was, or after I put those other ones in. Once we get this lined up and everything, we're gonna take the door off again, and we're gonna have to take the hinge part that's attached to the door, not the door frame itself, but the door. We're gonna take that off, and then we'll clean those hinges all up, you know, up there where the pin is and where the threads are and stuff. I only got the other half of the hinge that attaches to the body. I cleaned those up, you know, previously, and painted them and stuff. So I didn't get to this side. I did this side that attaches to the body while I was doing the other two doors on the other side. See, now that is all cattywampus. We're way wide up here. That's probably almost 3/4 of an inch here, and then down here, we're at the very tip. We're about 1/8 of an inch. So what I think we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to cut up here on this top brace. Either I made it a little too long, or it pushed the back. There's steel in here to reinforce where this door mounts. So if I made this piece too long, it may have pushed back on the body, and, you know, in a sense, you know, making this gap wider. So I think to start though, I think what I'd like to do is put some spacers behind these hinges, and we'll see how that looks, because when I close this door, it actually moves and pushes it around away from this gap, and it's just not working right. So that gap's all over the place. So if you see, let me open this door. If you watch the way the door moves, as I close it, it pushes away. And I think there needs to be some spacer in there. I think it's pushing against the other piece in there. It's not working right. So I have some spacers made a bunch of them just for this issue. And we're gonna gap the door this way, and then we're gonna see where we fall. And you wanna make one movement at a time, and then check your progress. You don't ever wanna, you know, make 12 different, you know, moves. It's just like if you're setting up a race car or doing any kind of fabrication, of course. You wanna do one thing, check it, and another thing, check it. That's why these things take so long. The guys that have the experience, you know, they know what to do and they don't have to check it 20 times, but when you're a beginner like me, you want to make sure you double check. So the first step, like I said, we're going to put the spacers back here and we'll see where it lines up, and if it's still not right, we're going to cut here and we can ratchet strap this together and we'll pull it together so that it brings the gap where it needs to be. There we go, like that. Now hold it from falling on me. Thank you. Alright. Well, it'll be fine. Let go. See? It'll go in for a minute.
How did you get this off?
Which one? The front one? You take the pins out of the hinges and then it comes off. You can also unbolt the hinges themselves and take it off. But I find it's easier to line the pins up than it is to monkey around trying to put screws in while the door's hanging there. Because you can grab a hold of the door from the inside through the window and hold it. Where here you gotta have someone like hold the door like this and then put your screws in. Alright, been working on these back door for a little bit here, and want to show you a couple things that I figured out. I put one spacer in, tried that behind the hinge, and then I put two in, and that seemed to be okay. That seemed to work alright. But I'm running into trouble here where the door doesn't want to close by itself, and I want to show you what I found. So I'll flip the camera around and I'll show you what I think is going on. That's a welder. If you'd like to learn how to use that someday, we can do that. What are those? Keys, yeah. Where are you going with them? Okay, so you have your gap line here, and it looks pretty good actually. It's not horrible. It gets better as the door closes. So if I push on the door, you can see the bottom gap gets wider. But that's what the problem is. When I push on the door, let's see here if you can see that gap, and then when I push on it, it spreads. So something's interrupting it from closing in that hinge there. So I want to show you here what the difference is. So you can see right in here, right there where that square edge is, there's gap between this part and that other part, which this is the outer part of the hinge, that's the inner part of the hinge. Now, if we move down here, there is no gap whatsoever. So I think the inner hinge is bent, and I believe that's the problem. I think if we bend it back, I think it'll give us the gap that we need, and we won't have any more issues trying to close the door. We won't have to push on it anymore. I'm gonna have to take the door off again, and we're gonna see how flat it is. If it's not bent, we're gonna try and bend it anyway the other way, so that maybe, just maybe, it'll give us the gap that we need. When we took this hinge off, it was actually flat, so we put a slight bend in it. Not much, just a little bit. We're gonna see if that works. I'll put the door back on, and if not, try something else. Yeah, so we're checking the fit here, and you can see the door. You can see there's the gap up here is quite significant compared to the middle of this door. Now, what I might do is I might bump this. I might hit it with a hammer and pop this up, because it's not very far off, if you can see that. And it's obviously not perfectly flat. It has some bends in it and stuff. But you can see down here it's a little bit bigger of a gap, and that's the type of gap I want down here, right in this area right here. I don't know if that's might be 3/16 of an inch, and down here we only have like 1/8 of an inch, maybe a 1/16 in some areas. Now the next step here is we're going to close this door, the back door, to see what kind of... That's what I started with on the other side. It takes a long time to get it quite right. The other side looks really good compared to this side, obviously. See, the gap down there is not... That's about as close as I want down to the bottom. We might end up doing, I think on that side I had to do this. We might end up cutting this brace up here about a 1/16 of an inch, and we'll pop the roof forward. Done with that one? What else you need? Okay, give that back. What about this one? Done with that one? No, not that one. Alright. I don't have much else. This? Don't get the glass. Okay, horrible. Door. Hit the door. Or, yeah. Okay. Good. You saw earlier we cut a splice in this piece up top here, and like I said earlier in the video, these pieces were they were all cut from scratch. I used a template for them, but they vary a little bit. So obviously you can see in this particular piece, it must have been about 1/4 of an inch too long. You see right here in the edge here. So what we're gonna do is I don't know, I guess we'll scribe that. We'll scribe that line, and then we'll release it so I can open the doors, and then I'll cut right along that line, and then we'll weld it back together. But the door gap here looks really good, and up here in the top it looks good. The only reason this is low is because this plate's underneath this one, but it ought to be all but perfect till we're done and we weld it in place. So this gap here is a little bit wider than the other side, but in that instance I can actually gap the door. I have spacers. I can push the door this way and it ought to get it just as close as the other side. Okay, I'll open the door, okay? 1 minute. Just a minute. Let me scribe these lines, okay? And then I'll open the door. Sound good? Okay. Gotta listen to the boss here. Make sure you're not crossing the boss. Alright, hold on. Let me scribe these lines. Sleeve drive here. Hey, Colton.
I was getting a snack.
Oh, did you bring me something?
No.
Why not? Alright, so scribe that. Now we're gonna...
I'll that way.
Alright, I'm gonna do some cutting, okay? You might
You mean you're gonna cut the hot rod?
Yeah, well let me cut this and then you can get in. I cut it? Okay. Here's a close-up view of what we're left with. The gaps aren't perfect, but they're pretty close. A lot better than what we first started with. We'll fine-tune these as we go along. There's some other things we have to cut the inner clearance down at the rockers and things like that. So we'll fine-tune these gaps as we go along. There's no need to get them perfect because they might move a little bit as we're working on that later. Alright, we welded this all back up after we cut and spliced it. It's hard to see, but just take my word for it. You know, the gaps here are so much better. This door was like rubbing on the top rail here. You couldn't even close it without pushing the door down. And the front door, the gap's pretty good there. The only thing I want to improve upon is this door is a little bit high. It's probably about 1/16 of an inch high. And the gap here is not as close as the other side. But we can manipulate that a little bit in the next episode. Yeah, you can't hardly even tell I cut this and welded it. I mean, it's nice and smooth and clean. Other than there's a video, of course, about it. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap this one up. Thank you guys for your continued support. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please give a like down below, thumbs up, subscribe if you want to follow along with this car and what's to come in the future. Please subscribe, comment below, comment, subscribe, like, all that stuff. It's very helpful to the channel. It helps the algorithm push everything out. And we'll see you on the next one.